All right, so we're diving into a mystery that's captivated people for decades, the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Back in 1959, deep in the Ural Mountains, a group of hikers vanished, and the circumstances surrounding their deaths are, well, let's just say, they're truly bizarre.
Yeah, it's a case that's spawned countless theories, from avalanches to yetis, even government conspiracies. But before we get into all that, let's start at the beginning. Who were these hikers?
Well, they were 9 experienced hikers, all students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, led by a guy named Igor Dyatlov. And they were no strangers to adventure. These were seasoned trekkers, really pushing their limits.
So they set off into the Ural Mountains, a pretty unforgiving environment, especially in winter, and their destination, Kholat Shakal, which translates to, wait for it, Dead Mountain. Talk about ominous.
Like something straight out of a horror movie. And what's even more eerie is that one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, actually had to turn back early because he got sick. Little did he know that decision would save his life.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Fate, the fragility of life, all that. But for the remaining 9, the trek continued. Days turned into weeks, and when they didn't return, people started to worry. A search party was assembled, and what they found, well, that's where things get really strange.
So the search party finally locates the hikers' last campsite. And what do they find? The tent's been completely abandoned, but here's the kicker. It's slashed open from the inside.
Okay, that's not good. That image alone paints a pretty disturbing picture. Like, what could have been so terrifying that they had to cut their way out of their own tent in the middle of a freezing night?
Right. And it's not like they just took off in a hurry. All their belongings, their food, their supplies, even warm clothing, it was all left scattered around. These were experienced outdoorsmen. They knew how to survive in the wilderness. So what could have made them abandon everything and run?
Yeah, it defies logic. And as the search party followed the hikers' tracks, they made their first gruesome discovery. 2 bodies found by a cedar tree. And get this, they were only dressed in their underwear.
In their underwear. In the middle of winter. That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, does it? It's like a piece of the puzzle that just doesn't fit. And their hands were burned, too, like they were frantically trying to start a fire. It all points to some kind of desperate struggle against the elements.
But if they were trying to stay warm, why would they be so poorly dressed? Why not grab their clothes?
Exactly, it's a head-scratcher. And the mystery only deepens as they found 3 more bodies, this time a bit further away. But it seems they succumbed to hypothermia while trying to get back to the tent.
So they fled the tent in a panic, but then tried to return. It's like they were running from something and then realized their only hope was to get back to their shelter.
It's a bizarre sequence of events, for sure, but the most unsettling discoveries were yet to come. They eventually found the remaining 4 hikers, weeks later, much further from the tent, in a ravine. And the state of their bodies, well, it was horrifying.
Horrifying, how?
I'm talking skull fractures, broken ribs. One of them was even missing a tongue. These were injuries more consistent with a car crash than a hiking accident.
A car crash. But they were miles from any roads. What could have caused that kind of damage?
And here's the truly baffling part. There were no external wounds to explain these horrific internal injuries. It's as if they were crushed from the inside out.
Okay, now this is just getting creepy. So we've got 9 experienced hikers. They slash their way out of their tent in the dead of night. Some freeze to death trying to return. And the others meet a gruesome end with injuries that defy explanation. What in the world happened on Dead Mountain?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And we're just getting started.
Stay tuned, because in our next segment, we're diving deep into the theories, from natural disasters to the truly outlandish.
We're going to explore it all. Buckle up. All right, so last time we left off with a pretty grim picture. A slashed tent, scattered bodies, and injuries that just don't add up. So where do we even begin to try and make sense of this?
Well, the natural place to start is with natural explanations. Right. I mean, could it have been an avalanche?
Yes.
The Urals are known for harsh winters, sudden snowstorms. Maybe that explains the panicked escape from the tent.
It's a reasonable thought, but the problem is the evidence doesn't really support it. The location of the tent wasn't in a typical avalanche zone, and there were no reports of any significant snowfall around that time.
Yeah. And I guess an avalanche wouldn't explain those really strange, severe injuries, especially those internal injuries, without any external wounds.
Exactly. So if it wasn't Mother Nature, what about something more, let's say, man-made? This was the Cold War, after all. Lots of secrets, especially in the Soviet Union. What about a military experiment gone wrong?
Ooh, now that's interesting. I mean, we've heard the stories about strange lights seen in the sky around the time of the incident. Could those have been from some secret Soviet weapons testing?
Well, there are definitely reports of those lights, and some people believe they could have been from missile tests or some other experimental technology. And there's the added wrinkle that traces of radiation were found on some of the hikers' clothing.
Radiation, that's a bit unnerving. But wouldn't that have killed them?
It's possible, but the levels weren't actually high enough to be lethal. And the types of injuries the hikers had, they don't really match up with what we know about the effects of radiation exposure or weapons testing.
So it seems like we can rule out a military cover-up, at least for now. So what's left? I mean, we've tackled natural disasters, we've considered government conspiracies. I guess that leaves us with...
The paranormal?
Yeah, the paranormal. I mean, the Ural Mountains have a long history of folklore and legends, tales of strange creatures and unexplained phenomena. Could the hikers have encountered something, well, something out of this world?
Ah, you're talking about the infamous Yeti theory. It's a popular one, no doubt. Could the hikers have stumbled upon a Yeti or some other unknown creature lurking in those mountains? It would certainly explain the fear and panic that drove them from the tent.
And maybe, just maybe, those internal injuries were caused by some kind of, I don't know, unimaginable force. A monstrous creature with incredible strength.
It's fun to speculate, but again, we have to look at the evidence. No footprints, no signs of a struggle, no other eyewitness accounts besides the hiker's own final and somewhat cryptic diary entries. It's a compelling narrative, but it lacks, well, proof.
Okay, so we've covered the big three: natural disaster, government conspiracy, and paranormal activity. Anything else out there that might hold more weight?
There's one theory that's gained some traction in recent years: infrasound.
Infrasound, what's that?
It's a type of low-frequency sound wave, often below the range of human hearing. The thing is, even though we can't consciously hear it, infrasound can still affect us, producing feelings of unease, anxiety, even panic in some cases. And some researchers believe that certain wind patterns, especially in mountainous areas, can generate infrasound.
So you're saying it's possible that infrasound could have caused the hikers to flee their tent in a state of terror?
It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. Infrasound is a real phenomenon, and its effects are documented. But like the other theories, it doesn't quite explain everything, especially those severe internal injuries.
Right. Infrasound might explain the panic, but it doesn't explain broken bones and missing tongues. So it seems like every theory we've looked at has its flaws. Did the Russian authorities ever reach a conclusion about what happened?
Well, they did reopen the investigation in 2020, focusing mainly on the avalanche theory. They eventually concluded that what's called a slab avalanche was the most likely culprit. That's a specific type of avalanche where a large slab of snow detaches from the mountainside.
So, case closed, right?
Not quite. Even with that renewed investigation and the official explanation, there are still a lot of unanswered questions. Critics of the avalanche theory point out inconsistencies in the evidence and argue that it wouldn't explain all of the injuries, particularly the internal trauma.
It's like this case is just designed to keep us guessing, isn't it?
It certainly seems that way. But there's one more aspect of this mystery we need to explore. Something that might offer some insights into the hiker's state of mind in those final days. And that's their personal belongings.
We were talking about the hikers' personal belongings, their diaries and photographs. Those might give us some clues about what was going through their minds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Those sorts of things, they offer a glimpse into, well, into their experiences, their thoughts, their emotions, like a window into their world.
And what do we see through that window? Well, at the beginning, we see a group that's excited, full of life, ready for adventure. The photos show them laughing, enjoying the scenery. They even had skis with them. And their diaries, they meticulously documented their route, their gear, the challenges they were anticipating, all that.
So everything seemed normal, at least at first.
Orderly. But then, as their journey goes on, you start to notice a shift. The diary entries, they become shorter, more focused on the harsh conditions, the difficulties they were facing, less about the fun stuff.
Almost like a shadow creeping over their expedition, huh?
Exactly. And then, on February 1st, 1959, the entries just stop. Silence.
Silence. It's almost as if the mountains themselves swallowed their voices. Like you said, the entries just stop. What happened in those final hours? What could have been so powerful to prevent them from writing, from documenting their experience?
It's a question that haunts this entire case. But remember that detail about the tent being slashed open from the inside? Well, some investigators believe the hikers didn't use a knife or any of their tools to do that.
Really? That's strange. Why wouldn't they use a knife?
That's the question, isn't it? Some theorize that they might have been in such a state of panic, so terrified that they ripped through the canvas with their bare hands.
With their bare hands,
Yeah.
that seems almost impossible, doesn't it? That canvas is thick and tough. They would have needed incredible strength.
It does seem impossible. And that's what makes this incident so, well, so baffling. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, it's a story of adventure turned tragedy, a mystery that continues to captivate and confound. We've examined the evidence, explored the theories, but ultimately, the truth remains elusive. What happened on Dead Mountain that frigid February night? We may never know for sure, but the questions it raises about the power of nature, the limits of human understanding, those questions, they linger. And perhaps in the end, that's the true legacy of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. A chilling reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved, leaving us to grapple with the unknown.